You know those documentaries with swarms of locusts just devouring crops and fields, totally ravaged by those corn root worms, like entire harvests just wiped out by blight?
Yeah.
It feels almost biblical.
Right.
And the scary thing is with climate change, those scenarios were like increasingly likely,
Yeah.
But what really caught my eye recently is this idea of using AI, like artificial intelligence,
Yeah.
to combat
Yeah.
these threats.
It is fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
We're talking about using cutting-edge tech to solve, really age-old problems.
Yeah.
And so today we're going to deep dive into an interview with Karen Garrett.
Okay.
She's a plant pathologist who is really on the front lines of this research, and she makes a very compelling case for AI as this powerful tool in the fight to protect our food supply.
And she really lays out the challenges.
She does.
The way she describes it, climate change is like messing with the whole foundation of plant health.
Yeah.
That balance between the pathogen and the host plant and the environment.
Yeah.
It's that disease triangle, right?
Precisely.
Yeah.
So climate change is disrupting that triangle,
Okay.
throwing things out of whack and making outbreaks more likely.
Yeah.
Imagine, a warmer winter allowing a pest to survive and spread to regions where it couldn't before.
Yeah.
Or shifting rainfall patterns, creating like the ideal conditions for, a devastating fungus.
It's like she brought up that really chilling example of the Irish potato famine back in the 1840s.
Oh, yeah.
A blight fueled by the cool, wet weather just wiped out the potato crops year after year.
Wow.
1 million people died. 1 million more fled the country.
It's hard to fathom.
Yeah. It's just hard to fathom the scale of that tragedy.
Yeah, it really underscores the stakes, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We're talking about potential global food shortages, economic turmoil, even social unrest.
Yeah.
And that's exactly why this research is so crucial.
Okay, so let's get into the specifics.
Okay.
How exactly can AI help us stay ahead of these threats?
So Garrett highlights 3 key areas where AI is showing immense promise: surveillance robotics and the development of what some are calling supercrops.
Surveillance from space, that sounds straight out of science fiction.
Yeah.
But how does that actually work?
Drones and satellites equipped with AI-powered cameras. They can scan vast fields analyzing images to detect the early signs of disease.
Wow.
It's like a continuous health checkup for your crops, but on this massive scale.
So instead of relying on people, humans, to visually inspect these fields,
Right.
we're using AI to spot those really subtle changes.
Yeah.
That might signal a problem.
Exactly.
But how reliable is this technology? Can it really match the expertise of a trained eye?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
It's not about replacing human expertise entirely.
Okay.
It's more about augmenting it. AI excels at quickly analyzing huge amounts of data,
Okay.
far more than any human could ever process.
Yeah.
And this allows for earlier detection and intervention.
I read about how they're using this tech to combat that pretty devastating banana disease in Africa.
Right.
Bananas are a staple food for millions of people.
Yeah.
So the potential impact is huge.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just about detection.
Huh.
Imagine drones not only identifying the infected plants, but also delivering targeted treatments. A tiny dose of fungicide precisely where it's needed,
Wow.
minimizing waste and the environmental impact.
That level of precision is just amazing.
It is.
Speaking of precision, you mentioned robotics.
Yes.
What role are robots playing in this agricultural revolution?
Well, we're already seeing AI-powered robots sorting produce, identifying and removing damaged or diseased fruits and vegetables. But the possibilities go way beyond that.
Okay.
Imagine robots capable of harvesting crops, weeding fields, even applying pesticides with incredible accuracy.
Wow.
All guided by AI.
So instead of relying on manual labor, which can be so backbreaking and time-consuming,
It is.
we have these tireless robotic farm hands.
Exactly.
But are we talking about replacing human jobs entirely?
That's a complex question and a valid concern.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily about replacing jobs,
Well-
but more about changing the nature of work in agriculture. So farmers could shift from manual tasks to managing and overseeing these AI systems,
Okay.
which would require a different set of skills.
So it's about upskilling,
Yeah,
adapting to this new landscape.
exactly.
Okay, and what about those super crops you mentioned?
Right.
How is AI being used to create those?
This is where it gets particularly interesting.
Okay.
AI can analyze vast amounts of genetic data to help breeders develop new crop varieties. Varieties that are resistant to disease, pests, drought, you name it. It's like turbocharging the breeding process.
Okay.
Potentially shortening the time it takes to develop these resilient crops from years to months.
So instead of waiting for traditional breeding methods
Right.
to slowly yield results,
Exactly.
we're using AI to really speed up the process,
Yeah.
creating crops specifically tailored to the challenges of a changing climate. That sounds incredibly promising.
It does, but of course no technology is without its challenges.
Right.
And those challenges are exactly what we'll be exploring in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds good.
Yeah.
We just finished talking about the potential of AI to revolutionize agriculture. And I have to admit, it's easy to get swept up in all the possibilities.
Yeah.
But like you said, no technology is without its challenges.
Absolutely. And some of these challenges are quite complex,
Yeah.
touching on issues of access, affordability, and even like the potential for unintended consequences.
Let's start with just like the practicalities.
Okay.
You mentioned earlier that these AI algorithms, they need a ton of data to learn effectively.
A huge amount.
What kind of data are we talking about here?
I think thousands upon thousands of images of both healthy and diseased plants. And it's not enough to just have the images. Each one needs to be labeled, indicating what the AI should be looking for.
Okay.
This process of data labeling. It's so time-consuming.
Oh, wow.
And expensive.
So it's not as simple as just pointing a camera at a field and letting the AI figure things out.
Right.
There's a lot of human effort involved in creating those data sets.
Exactly. And that raises the question of, who has access to this kind of data?
Yeah.
Larger agricultural companies with significant resources, they might have an advantage.
Right.
But what about small farmers?
Yeah.
Particularly those in developing countries, where the need for these technologies is often greatest.
So we really need to make sure that these advancements benefit everyone.
Yeah.
Not just a select few.
Exactly.
It's one thing to develop these cutting-edge AI tools, but it's another thing entirely to make them accessible and affordable.
Precisely. And even if the technology is accessible, there's the issue of training.
Right.
Farmers need the knowledge and skills to actually utilize these tools effectively.
Yeah.
Simply handing someone, a sophisticated robot or a drone equipped with AI cameras,
Right.
it's not enough.
It's like giving someone a powerful computer with no software or instructions.
Exactly.
It's just a hunk of metal and plastic without the right knowledge to put it to use.
Exactly. Capacity building is crucial.
Okay.
There's a real need for educational programs and resources tailored specifically to the use of AI in agriculture.
So far, we've been focused mostly on the practical challenges.
Right.
But are there any potential downsides? Any risks associated with widespread adoption of AI in agriculture?
That's an important question.
Yeah.
One concern is that as we rely more and more on these AI systems, we might lose some of that traditional knowledge and skills that have been passed down through generations of farmers. There's a risk of becoming too dependent on technology,
Right.
losing that intuitive understanding of the land and the plants.
It's like relying solely on GPS navigation.
Right.
Instead of learning how to read a map.
Yeah.
You might get to your destination faster, but you lose that deeper understanding of the terrain.
Precisely. And there's also the issue of data security.
Okay.
These AI systems rely on vast amounts of data,
Yeah.
including potentially sensitive information about farms and crops. So how do we make sure that this data is protected from cyber attacks or misuse?
Those are some valid concerns.
Yeah.
It seems like with any powerful technology, there's always that potential for unintended consequences.
It's true.
Yeah.
That's why it's so crucial to have these conversations now, while the technology is still developing.
Okay.
We need to anticipate the potential downsides and actually work towards solutions. It's not about rejecting AI, but using it responsibly and thoughtfully.
So how do we navigate this complex landscape, balancing those potential benefits with the inherent risks?
It's a collective effort.
Okay.
It requires collaboration between scientists, policymakers, farmers, even consumers.
Yeah.
We need open dialogue, transparent research, and a willingness to address these challenges head on.
It sounds like we need to be asking some tough questions.
Yeah.
About data ownership, about algorithmic bias, about the potential impact on rural communities.
Absolutely. And those are exactly the questions we'll be diving into after a quick break.
Hang on with us, listeners. We're about to delve into those ethical considerations of AI in agriculture and explore what this all means for the future of food. We've been talking about, the potential for AI to really transform agriculture and some of the challenges that come with it.
Yeah.
And it's clear that this technology raises some pretty profound questions, not just about how we grow food,
Right.
but also about the kind of future we're creating.
Exactly. As we kind of delve deeper into this conversation, we inevitably bump up against these ethical considerations. It's not enough to just ask, can we do this?
Right.
We also need to ask, should we do this? And if so, how do we do it responsibly?
So where do we even begin to untangle these ethical knots?
Yeah.
What are some of the key questions we should be grappling with?
Well, one pressing concern is the potential impact on rural communities and livelihoods.
Okay.
As AI-driven automation becomes more common in agriculture, what happens to those farmers and farm workers whose jobs are displaced?
Right.
How do we ensure that the benefits of this technology are shared equitably and that those rural communities aren't left behind?
It's a question of social justice, isn't it?
It is.
We can't just celebrate the efficiency and productivity of AI without thinking about the human cost.
Right.
So what are some potential solutions here?
Well, it's complex, but some are proposing retraining programs to equip people with the skills needed for those new jobs created by this technological shift.
Okay.
Others are advocating for social safety nets or even a universal basic income to provide that economic security in a world where work looks different.
So we're talking about a really fundamental shift in how we think about work and value in society. It's not just about tweaking the existing system.
Right.
It's potentially reimagining it altogether.
Precisely. And then there's the question of corporate control over the food system.
Okay.
As large agricultural companies, invest heavily in AI, will they gain even more power and influence? Will smaller farmers be able to compete in this new landscape?
So are we headed towards a future where just a handful of corporations control the production and distribution of our food?
It's a real risk, but there are counter movements, pushing for greater transparency, data ownership rights for farmers, and support for those more localized food systems. Ultimately, it's about ensuring that those benefits of AI are distributed widely and don't just serve to concentrate wealth and power in the hands of a few.
It sounds like there's this real tension between the potential of AI to solve some of our, most pressing food challenges and the potential for it to make those existing inequalities even worse.
Absolutely. How do we navigate that tension?
Right.
It requires conscious and deliberate action,
Okay.
We need policymakers, researchers, and consumers to advocate for ethical guidelines and regulations that ensure AI is used responsibly in agriculture.
So it's about being aware of the potential pitfalls? And actively working to mitigate them?
Exactly. It's about shaping the technology to serve our values, not the other way around.
This has been such a thought-provoking conversation.
It has.
It's clear that AI has the potential to revolutionize agriculture. But it's up to us to make sure that this revolution benefits everyone.
Right.
And creates, a more just and sustainable food system.
I couldn't agree more. And, I really encourage all of our listeners to keep exploring these issues, engage in these conversations, and make choices that line with their values. The future of food is in our hands.
That's a powerful message to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of AI and agriculture.
My pleasure.
Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep striving for a better food future.